The cafeteria went silent the moment Specialist Kira Thorne walked through the door. I watched from my position at the corner table, my secondary eyes tracking her movement, while my primary eyes remained fixed on the data tablet before me. The human female moved with deliberate slowness, her boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. She carried her meal tray like it weighed nothing, though I knew the standard ration packs weighed at least 3 kilograms fully loaded. "That's her," hissed Velcor, one of my squad mates, his mandibles clicking nervously. "The quiet one from Barracks 7. I glanced at him, my head crest flattening slightly. "What about her?" "Word is she never talks. Just sits there, eats, goes back to her quarters." Velcor leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Makris from 3rd Battalion tried to mess with her last week. Knocked her tray over, called her some human insult." "And?" I prompted, my curiosity piqued despite myself. "She just stared at him, didn't say a word, cleaned up her food, got another tray, sat back down." Velcor's eyes widened. "Makris laughed about it for days, called her a coward." I studied the human more carefully now. She was small by human standards, perhaps 1.6 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back in a tight regulation bun. Her uniform was immaculate, pressed to perfection, not a single thread out of place. She chose a table in the far corner, the one nobody ever sat at because the environmental controls made it too cold for most species. She didn't seem to mind. "Why do you care about some human who won't stand up for herself?" I asked, turning back to my meal. Velcor's expression shifted, something like fear flickering across his features. "Because Makris just got transferred. Emergency reassignment. No explanation." That made me pause. "Transferred where?" "Border Patrol. The contested zones." I set down my utensil. The contested zones were suicide missions, essentially. Low resources, high casualty rates, constant combat with hostile forces. Nobody got sent there unless they had seriously screwed up, or unless someone with serious pull wanted them gone. "You think she had something to do with it?" Velcor shrugged, his shoulder plates rising and falling. "I think it's a weird coincidence." Over the next few days, I started paying more attention to Specialist Thorne. Not because I was interested in her, specifically, but because mysteries bothered me. I was an intelligence analyst, after all. Patterns were my specialty, and this human was definitely a pattern worth noting. She arrived at the cafeteria at exactly 0600 every morning. She ate the same breakfast: protein paste, 2 nutrient bars, 1 cup of that horrible black liquid humans called coffee. She never spoke to anyone. She never made eye contact unless directly addressed. When she walked the corridors, other soldiers moved out of her way, though most of them probably didn't even realize they were doing it. It was Sergeant Brax who finally pushed things too far. Brax was a Corthan, built like a tank with an ego to match. He stood nearly 2.5 meters tall, had arms thicker than my torso, and enjoyed reminding everyone within earshot that he had won the station's combat tournament 3 cycles running. He was also, to put it mildly, an absolute jackass. I was in the recreation area when it happened, reviewing some reports on my tablet while half watching the view screen. Thorne was there too, sitting in her usual corner, reading an actual physical book. Not a datapad. An honest-to-stars book made of paper. I had never seen one before arriving at this station. Brax walked in with his usual entourage, 4 other Corthan warriors who followed him around like pilot fish around a shark. He spotted Thorne immediately, and I saw the malicious grin spread across his face. "Well, well," he boomed, his voice echoing off the walls. "Look what we have here. The human mouse, reading her little book." Thorne didn't look up. Her eyes remained fixed on the page, one finger marking her place. Brax moved closer, his boots thundering against the floor. "Hey, Mouse, I'm talking to you." Still nothing. She turned a page. I felt my stomach tighten. This was not going to end well. Brax did not handle being ignored gracefully. "You deaf, human?" He was standing right over her now, using his considerable height to loom. "Or just stupid?" Thorne's finger paused on the page. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, very slowly, she placed a bookmark between the pages, closed the book, and set it gently on the table beside her. She stood up, turned to face Brax, and finally, looked him directly in the eyes. The room went absolutely silent. "Can I help you, Sergeant?" Her voice was quiet, almost soft. The kind of voice someone uses when they're being very, very careful with their words. Brax laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Can you help me? That's rich. Yeah, maybe you can help me understand why Command wastes resources on weaklings like you. Humans are supposed to be these great warriors, right? That's what all the stories say. But you," he gestured dismissively, "you're pathetic." One of his friends laughed. "She's probably never even seen combat." "Wouldn't last 5 seconds in a real fight," another added. Thorne's expression didn't change. Her face remained perfectly neutral, like she was listening to a weather report. "Is there something specific you need, Sergeant? Or are you just making conversation?" The sarcasm in her tone was so subtle, I almost missed it. But Brax heard it. His face darkened, the ridges along his skull flushing a deep purple. "You got a mouth on you, Mouse. Maybe I should teach you some respect." He reached out, clearly intending to grab her shoulder. She moved. I barely saw it happen. One moment Brax's hand was reaching toward her. The next moment she had sidestepped, caught his wrist, and redirected his, momentum so smoothly that he stumbled forward 2 steps before catching himself. It looked effortless, like she had simply stepped aside, and gravity had done the rest. Brax spun around, genuine anger flashing across his features now. "You little—" "Sergeant Brax." A new voice cut through the room, cold and sharp as a knife. "Is there a problem here?" Commander Velix stood in the doorway, her 4 arms crossed over her chest. She was a Shi'ari, one of the few species in the Alliance that could stare down a Korthan without flinching. Her reputation for running a tight ship was legendary. Brax straightened immediately. "No, Commander, just having a conversation with Specialist Thorne." A conversation. Velix's tone made it clear she didn't believe a word of it. "How interesting. Specialist Thorne, do you have anything to add?" Thorne shook her head once. "No, Commander." "Then I suggest everyone return to their activities. Sergeant Brax, my office. Now!" Brax shot Thorne a look that promised retribution, then followed the commander out. His friends scattered like leaves in a wind. Thorne picked up her book, sat back down, and resumed reading, as if nothing had happened. I stared at my tablet, my mind racing. That move she had pulled, that effortless redirection, that wasn't something you learned in basic training. That was advanced combat technique, the kind that took years to master. Who was this human? The answer came 3 days later, completely by accident. I was working late in the intelligence division, cross-referencing deployment records for an unrelated assignment, when I stumbled across a file that had been misfiled under general personnel records instead of classified operations. The moment I opened it, warning flags started popping up across my screen, demanding authorization codes and security clearances. I should have closed it immediately. That would have been the smart thing to do, the safe thing. Instead, I used my analyst credentials to bypass the first layer of security. Just to see what was so important, I told myself. Just a quick look. The file was labeled Operation Ghost Rain, classified, eyes only. I opened it. The first thing I saw was a casualty report. 57 enemy combatants eliminated. 0 friendly casualties. Mission duration: 4 hours, 16 minutes. The second thing I saw was a personnel file with an attached photo. Specialist Kira Thorne stared back at me from the screen, but this wasn't the quiet, reserved human I had been observing for weeks. This version of Thorne was covered in dirt and blood, her face streaked with camouflage paint, her eyes hard as diamonds. She was crouched in what looked like jungle terrain, holding a rifle that was nearly as long as she was tall. I scrolled down, my heart's pounding. Mission summary: insertion behind enemy lines to gather intelligence on hostile weapons development. Team of 6 specialists ambushed on day 3. 5 team members killed in initial contact. Specialist Thorne continued mission alone. Extracted 48 hours later with complete intelligence package and confirmed elimination of all hostile forces in the sector. My hands were shaking now. I kept reading. There were more operations, so many more. Urban warfare in the Keltar ruins. Hostage extraction from a pirate stronghold. Deep space reconnaissance on a dead world where the atmosphere itself was toxic. Every mission classified. Every mission successful. Every mission left a trail of bodies behind. The file included commendations, medals I didn't even recognize, Purple Heart, Silver Star, something called a Medal of Honor. There were psychological evaluations too, dense reports filled with words like compartmentalization, trauma response, survivor's guilt, and exceptional emotional control under extreme stress. The most recent entry was dated 6 months ago. Specialist Thorne requested transfer to rear echelon duties. Request approved. Recommendation: extended leave and mandatory counseling. Note from commanding officer: Thorne has given enough. Let her rest. I sat back in my chair, feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. Rest. They had sent her here to rest. This quiet, peaceful station in the middle of nowhere, far from any combat zones, far from anything that might remind her of what she had been through. And idiots like Brax were trying to pick fights with her. I closed the file, cleared my access logs as best I could, and sat in the darkness of my office for a long time, thinking. The next morning, I found Velcor in the training room practicing his hand-to-hand forms against a combat dummy. "I need to tell you something," I said without preamble, "about Specialist Thorne." He stopped mid-strike, turning to look at me. "What about her?" I glanced around, making sure we were alone. "She's not what we thought. She's not weak or a coward or anything like that." "Then what is she?" I thought about those mission reports, those casualty numbers, that look in her eyes in the photographs. She's someone who has been to war. Real war. The kind that breaks people. And she survived it. Velcor's expression shifted. "How do you know this?" "I can't tell you, but trust me on this. If Brax keeps pushing her, he's going to find out the hard way that there's a difference between a tournament fighter and someone who has actually killed to survive." He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you." "Good. Spread the word. Quietly. Tell people to leave her alone." "And if they don't?" I thought about that redirection move, the way she had handled Brax's aggression with such minimal effort. "Then they deserve whatever happens to them." But Brax, of course, didn't get the message. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. It happened in the main corridor during shift change, when the halls were packed with personnel heading to and from their assignments. I was there, caught in the crowd, when I heard Brax's voice booming over the general noise. "There she is, the mighty warrior. Tell me, Mouse, how many books did you kill to earn all those medals?" I pushed through the crowd, trying to get closer, to see what was happening. Thorn was standing perfectly still, her back against the wall, her face expressionless. Brax had her cornered, his bulk blocking her path, one massive hand planted on the wall beside her head. "I asked you a question, human. Please move, Sergeant." Her voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was something underneath it now, something cold and sharp. "Make me." The crowd had grown silent, everyone watching. Some looked uncomfortable, others excited at the prospect of a fight. I saw a few people recording on their personal devices. Thorn closed her eyes for a moment, took a deep breath, then opened them again. When she spoke, her voice was different, harder. "Sergeant Brax, this is your last chance to walk away," he laughed. "Or what? You'll report me? Go ahead, see if anyone cares." "No," she said softly. "I won't report you." Then she moved, and the world exploded into violence. What happened next took approximately 4.3 seconds. I know because I checked the security footage later, frame by frame, trying to understand what my eyes had witnessed. Brax never saw it coming. None of us did. Thorn's right hand shot up, fingers rigid, striking directly into a nerve cluster beneath Brax's extended arm. His entire limb went instantly numb, dropping like dead weight. Before he could react, she ducked under his other arm, pivoted on her heel, and drove her elbow into the back of his knee. The massive Corthan dropped forward with a grunt of surprise. She didn't stop there. As he fell, she caught his head, controlled his descent, and had him face down on the floor with one arm twisted behind his back in a lock that looked painful even from where I stood. The whole thing was surgical, precise, utterly without mercy, and completely silent except for Brax's strangled gasp of pain. "When someone tells you to walk away," Thorn said, her voice barely above a whisper but somehow carrying through the entire corridor, "you walk away. Understand?" Brax tried to struggle. She applied more pressure. Something in his shoulder made a grinding sound that made several onlookers wince. "I asked if you understand, Sergeant." "Yes. Stars above. Yes." She released him immediately, stepped back 3 paces, and straightened her uniform. Brax scrambled to his feet, cradling his arm, his face flushed dark with humiliation and rage. For a moment, I thought he might actually attack her again. Then Commander Velix's voice cut through the tension like a plasma torch through butter. "Everyone back to your stations. Now! Sergeant Brax, Specialist Thorn, you're both coming with me." The crowd dispersed rapidly, people practically tripping over themselves to avoid the commander's wrath. I lingered just long enough to see Thorn's face as she followed Velix down the corridor. That mask of calm had slipped, just for a second, and what I saw underneath made my blood run cold. She looked tired, so incredibly, soul-deep tired. Velcor found me in the mess hall an hour later, practically vibrating with excitement. "Did you see that? Did you actually see what she did to Brax? That was incredible. Where did she learn to fight like that?" "Keep your voice down," I hissed, glancing around to make sure nobody was listening. And no, it wasn't incredible. It was sad. He blinked at me, confused. "Sad? She just took down the toughest guy on the station in less time than it takes to blink." "Exactly. Do you know what that means? It means those moves are so ingrained in her muscle memory that she doesn't even have to think about them anymore. It means she's done this so many times that disabling someone twice her size is as natural as breathing. I leaned closer. It means she came here to get away from violence, and we brought it right back to her. Velkor's enthusiasm dimmed considerably. I hadn't thought about it like that. Most people don't. The official report came down 6 hours later. Sergeant Brax was being transferred, effective immediately. Destination, supply depot on the Outer Rim, processing cargo shipments for the next 3 years. Specialist Thorne received a formal reprimand for engaging in unauthorized combat, but no further disciplinary action. Everyone understood what had really happened. Velix had reviewed the security footage, seen exactly who started the confrontation, and made sure Brax paid for his stupidity. The reprimand for Thorne was just for show, to maintain protocol, but the damage was done. Word spread through the station like wildfire. Within a day, everyone knew what had happened. Within 2 days, everyone knew about Thorne's classified service record. I never figured out who leaked it, but suddenly, the quiet human from Barracks 7 was the subject of whispered conversations in every corner of the station. I saw her in the cafeteria the next morning, sitting at her usual table in the cold corner. But this time, the space around her was even more pronounced. People gave her a wide berth, some out of respect, others out of fear, most out of simple uncertainty about how to interact with someone who carried that much violence in their past. She looked more alone than ever. I made a decision that probably wasn't very smart. I got my breakfast, walked across the cafeteria, and stopped beside her table. "Mind if I sit here, Specialist?" She looked up from her book, genuine surprise flickering across her features. "It's a free station." I sat down, arranging my meal on the tray. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. She went back to her book. I focused on my food. Finally, she broke the silence. "You're Analyst Corvin, right? Intelligence Division?" "That's me. How did you know?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I pay attention. You've been watching me. For weeks." I felt my face flush. I was just curious." "I know." She closed her book, setting it aside. "Everyone is now, thanks to whoever decided to share my file with the entire station. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. You came here to rest, and instead, you got harassed." She shrugged, a very human gesture. "Not your fault. People like Brax exist everywhere, in every species, every culture, every military in the galaxy. Bullies who think strength means dominating others. You could have reported him before it escalated." "I could have." She picked up her coffee, took a sip, made a face like it tasted terrible but drank it anyway. "But then what? He gets a slap on the wrist, comes back angrier, and the cycle continues. Sometimes you have to make a point so clear that even the densest skull can't miss it." I thought about Brax's face as she'd locked his arm, that mixture of shock and pain and dawning realization that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. "You made your point." "Yeah, and now everyone's scared of me." She didn't sound happy about it, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid by keeping quiet in the first place. I ate in silence for a moment, considering my words carefully. "For what it's worth, I'm not scared of you." "You should be," she said softly. "You read my file. You know what I've done. I know what you were ordered to do. There's a difference." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something raw and vulnerable in her eyes. "Is there?" Because I stopped being able to tell a long time ago. Before I could respond, Velkor appeared at our table carrying his own tray. He hesitated, glancing between us. "Can I join you both?" Thorne's expression shifted back to neutral. It's a free station. He sat down, and for several awkward minutes, the three of us ate in silence. Then Velcor, never one to leave well enough alone, cleared his throat. So, that move you used on Brax, the arm lock thing, where did you learn that? I kicked him under the table. He yelped. But Thorne actually smiled. A real smile this time, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Close quarters combat training. Level 4 certification. Took me 8 months to earn it, and I broke 3 ribs and dislocated my shoulder in the process. Was it worth it? Velcor asked, genuinely curious. Her smile faded. It kept me alive. Whether that makes it worth it depends on the day you ask me. The honesty in her answer hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't some hardened warrior who gloried in combat. This was someone who had survived hell and was still trying to figure out how to live with the memories. Over the following weeks, something strange happened. Slowly, cautiously, people started approaching Thorne. Not to challenge her or mock her, but to ask questions. Young recruits who had never seen combat wanted to know what it was really like. Veterans who had fought in minor skirmishes wanted to compare experiences. Even a few of the hand-to-hand combat instructors asked if she would be willing to demonstrate some techniques. She turned down most requests politely, but firmly. The attention clearly made her uncomfortable. But occasionally, when someone approached with genuine respect and honest curiosity, she would answer their questions with careful, measured words. I watched her navigate these interactions with the same precision she had used to disable Brax, never giving more information than necessary, never glorifying the violence, always emphasizing the cost. One evening, I found her in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. The deck was usually crowded, but at this late hour, it was empty except for the two of us. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I said, moving to stand beside her. "It's quiet," she replied. "That's what I like most about space. You can't hear the explosions, can't hear people screaming, just silence." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. After a long pause, she continued. "You want to know the real reason I requested transfer to a rear station?" "Only if you want to tell me." I started forgetting their faces. Her voice was barely audible. My team. The people who died in that ambush. I could remember the mission details, the objectives, the tactical situation. But their faces were starting to blur together, and that terrified me more than any enemy ever did. She turned to look at me, and I saw tears in her eyes, though none fell. If I forgot them, then they really died for nothing. So I asked to be sent somewhere quiet, somewhere boring, somewhere I could stop fighting long enough to remember how to be human again, to remember them properly. And then Brax happened. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. And then Brax happened. Story of my life. Every time I try to step away, something drags me back. "It doesn't have to," I said carefully. "Brax is gone. His friends learned their lesson. You could still have the quiet posting you wanted." "Could I?" She gestured at the stars. "Everyone knows now. They look at me and they see a weapon, not a person. Even the ones who are respectful about it, they still see the soldier first and the woman second." I wanted to argue, but I knew she was right. I had done the same thing myself, hadn't I? Spent weeks analyzing her like she was a tactical puzzle to solve, instead of just talking to her like a normal person. "I'm sorry," I said, "for treating you like a curiosity instead of a colleague." She shrugged. "You're an analyst. Puzzles are literally your job. Besides, you're here now, aren't you? Talking to me like a person. That's more than most people manage. Velkor's been asking about you, I offered. Wants to know if you'd be willing to teach him some defensive techniques. Not the lethal stuff, just basic self-protection. And what did you tell him? That he should ask you himself, and be prepared for you to say no. She smiled at that, a genuine smile this time. Smart answer. Tell him I'll think about it. Maybe if he asks nicely and promises not to use anything I teach him to show off, I'll show him a few basics. Really? Why not? Might as well do something useful while I'm here. And it beats sitting in my quarters every night, reading the same books over and over. Over the next few months, Thorn started conducting informal training sessions. Nothing official, just small groups of interested personnel in the auxiliary gym during off hours. She taught defensive techniques, awareness drills, how to de-escalate confrontations before they turned physical. I attended a few sessions, more to observe than to participate. What struck me most was how she taught. She never bragged, never showed off, never made anyone feel inferior for not picking up techniques quickly. She was patient, encouraging, and absolutely insistent that violence should always be the last resort. The goal is never to win a fight, she told one group. The goal is to not be in a fight at all. Everything I'm teaching you is for the worst-case scenario, when talking has failed and running isn't an option. Watching her work with the younger recruits, I saw a different side of her emerge. She was still quiet, still reserved, but there was warmth there that hadn't been visible before. Like teaching these defensive skills, skills meant to protect rather than destroy, was helping her reconnect with something she had lost. One day, after a particularly intense session where she had demonstrated how to break various holds and grabs, Velkor approached her nervously. "Specialist Thorn, can I ask you something personal?" She was toweling off sweat, catching her breath. "You can ask. Can't guarantee I'll answer. Do you regret it? The combat deployments, the missions, all of it?" She was quiet for a long time, staring at the towel in her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret every life I had to take, even the ones who were actively trying to kill me. I regret that the galaxy is still so broken that we need people like me to do the things I did." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "But I don't regret surviving, and I don't regret protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves. So, no, I don't regret it. I just wish it hadn't been needed in the first place." It was the most philosophical I had ever heard her be, and I could see the answer resonated with Velkor. He nodded slowly, processing her words. "Thank you for being honest. Thank you for asking a real question instead of just wanting war stories." As the weeks turned into months, something remarkable happened. Thorn's presence on the station shifted from being a source of gossip and fear to something else entirely. She became a fixture, someone people nodded to in the corridors, someone the younger personnel looked up to not because of her combat record, but because of how she carried herself now. The bullying stopped entirely, not because people were afraid of being beaten up, but because Thorn had quietly, patiently, created a culture where that kind of behavior was simply unacceptable. She led by example, treating everyone with respect regardless of rank or species, and somehow that example spread. I found her in the observation deck again one night, 6 months after the incident with Brax. She was in her usual spot, staring at the stars. "Room for one more?" I asked. "Always," she said, and I realized she meant it. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching a distant nebula paint colors across the viewport. "I think I'm ready," she said suddenly. "Ready for what?" "To remember them properly. My team. I've been writing down everything I can recall. Their faces, their voices, their stupid jokes, their favorite foods. All of it, before I forget any more. She glanced at me. Would you like to hear about them sometime? I felt honored that she would offer. I would like that very much. Good. Because I think talking about them, keeping their memory alive, might be the most important mission I've ever had. She smiled then, and it reached her eyes this time. A real smile, unguarded and genuine. And I realized that Specialist Kira Thorne had finally found what she came here looking for. Not isolation, not escape, but a way to make peace with her past while building something better for her future. Nobody tried to bully her anymore, not because they were afraid of her war record, but because they had finally learned to see the person behind it. And that, I think, was worth more than any medal.